Welcome to Women's Radio. Today, I have a person who got the worst news you can get and her story about what she did with that. She's still here, so it's got to be a good story. So I would like to welcome Sandi to Women's Radio, who has a wonderful book out and a lot of helpful information for us to live and be happy and to love. Welcome, Sandi.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I know that you got some horrific news some long time ago. Tell us about your story. Tell us about your journey.
In 1986, I was told by 5 neurologists that I had 6 months to a year to live. And it was shortly after that, just weeks after that, I'm an artist, I'm a fine artist. I was looking at the work that I had created most recently, and one was of a bouquet of dead carnations. Another was of a fish hanging upside down by its tail, a dead fish. Another was a woman hanging onto a gravestone. And another was a portrait I had done of my grandmother who had died of a brain tumor before I was born.
Oh my goodness.
It was the scariest moment of my life when I realized that that death had been following me.
Really?
I mean, I just, how like Wile E. Coyote, the cartoon character, how he feels when he finds himself off the cliff and he pumps his little legs. Well, that's what I did with my mind. I mean, I knew I was tripping out. I was just so frightened. But then I realized I was also enveloped by an incredible amount of love. I mean, I just felt pure love suddenly. And everything in the room would look brighter.
Wow.
Thought for a moment, would I rather follow what 5 doctors say that I'm going to die, or this loving energy that I'm now feeling? And I wanted to get as close as I could to what I felt was God. And I just wanted to attach myself to his ankles. And I felt that the best way to do that was by being the person I was created to be. And to be as loving a person, which I believe we were all created to be loving. If you just look at babies, I mean, they're pure
Right, exactly.
love. And that was what I strived to do in every way I possibly could for the rest of my life, and I still do.
That is incredible. And so when did the tide turn for you? And then, or when did it click in, or what was the turning point?
When was the turning point for
Well,
having
you got this diagnosis and you started making changes in your life. So when did you notice that the things you were doing actually had made some difference and that you were on the right path?
Well, one of the first and most horrible traumatic responses that someone goes through that's been diagnosed with a life-threatening disease is their inner critic starts screaming at them. And I experienced that, and I knew I could feel my body weakening because this voice would not stop in my head, and it was not a nice voice. And so I learned that I had to do something about it, or I was going to die because I could feel my body weakening from it. So I turned to the voice and asked the voice, what is it you want of me?
That is such a good question.
And opened my heart to it without judging, without being angry, just being as loving as I could, even to this angry voice. And once the voice got the attention that it needed, that it was wanting to get, it stopped.
Wow.
And it was situations like that just kept one after the other that just strengthened my body, and I could feel my body strengthening, and I can feel when situations were unhealthy for me, and so I learned from them too.
I've heard from a lot of people that really our bodies are this amazing mechanism, and that we're actually vibrations. And you can feel that on the inside. I think that's where anxiety comes from. I think that's where love comes from, is all those things are actually vibrations. We've just never been taught very well about how to manage the information that we're getting, not even to tune into the information that we're getting. So it's one of the reasons I'm so delighted that you're here and you're sharing your experience. People need to learn how to do this.
Thank you. one of the things I also felt I needed to do was I needed to learn all of my emotions. I needed to feel all of my emotions, not just love, because the other ones, as I said, like the negative ones, were interfering with me feeling love. And so I needed to address that. And when we just allow ourselves to feel, for example, our anger or frustration or whatever we don't want to feel, what I'd spent my entire life not wanting to feel, they go away in 5 minutes.
Wow.
And they eventually turn to love. Once I relaxed, I could feel the love again.
Well, I hope you share this with a lot of people. I'm grateful that you're here sharing it with me and my audience. But how else do you get to share your points of view? And what are some of the reactions that people have had that you love to share with other people to show how it works?
The reactions have been absolutely amazing because I explain it in such a way that it's not anything we aren't already doing. But listening to our body is something we've always done. We know when we're thirsty and we need to get a glass of water.
Right.
We know when we're too hot or too cold, when we want sex or don't. Our body is always talking to us and always trying to protect us. And so that's what I use to navigate through the medical field. An extreme example was I got breast cancer years after I had the brain tumor, and I was told I had to get a mastectomy. And as soon as, by 2 doctors, and as soon as the doctor said the word mastectomy, I could hear my body screaming, no. And I trusted my body's wisdom, and I declined to have the operation. I used a natural treatment. And at that time, I was a poor, struggling artist, so I didn't use any doctor. And within 5 months, I was cancer-free.
Really? Oh my goodness.
I do
Well,
write about that in my book, I Chose Love.
and then how has this helped other people? I know that you talk with a lot of people, right?
Oh, I do. I do. And the excitement that people feel once they're tuned into their bodies and they have this wisdom. The feedback has been wonderful. In fact, I just got my 6th 5-star review on my book of people that are just delighted. And I think because I'm exposing something they already know,
Uh-huh.
they that in their body, and I just help them refine it and how to actually use it to their advantage. It's something we all were born with.
That's a really interesting point. And I think we talked about this before we started recording, that I think that most of us are not taught because our parents weren't taught, their parents weren't taught. So it has not been passed down how to listen to your body. And then we have a lot of professionals saying, oh, that's just poppycock and I have the right information. And so we often are torn between what we are told, or logic, and listening to our bodies. And people think it's foolish to do that. That's the other thing I hear from people. So it's got to be, you have to have some powerful instincts on the inside, or you have to be able to really, really get in touch with that information or learn to listen carefully. So how do you teach other people how to listen?
Like everything else, it takes practice. And one of the things I suggest is spending a week just feeling your good feelings, because everybody gravitates towards that. Just be aware of the positive feelings you feel. And then in the second week, start feeling the negative ones and just relax and let them pass through. Just relax.
I like what you said about actually turning inside and asking your negative feelings, what is it that you want to teach me? Or what can I do to serve you? Or I guess any words kind of like that.
Right.
And I learned that a long time ago. I don't practice it enough for sure, but I learned that a long time ago from a person, I believe, that wrote the book Holodynamics. Because they create mentally like something that would represent negative feelings, and then asking that screaming negative blob of whatever,
Yes.
what is it you've come to teach me?
Yes. Our minds know far less than our bodies do, and our bodies know more than our doctors do. So my hope,
Oh my goodness.
true, but if we could work together by sharing the information, because when you think about it, what doctors have spent years learning is how to work with our body's healing wisdom. And without that healing wisdom, there would be no doctors.
I think that's a really, really excellent point. We were also talking about a simple technique for gaining equilibrium when we are in high anxiety. And I certainly have experienced a lot of that. And you were suggesting deep breathing.
Right. So often we get hijacked by our feelings. And what is always a tool that is always accessible to us is our breathing. If we just focus on our breath and just take even just 3 would help you. And it was really helpful to make sure that your exhalation is longer than your inhalation and at least 6 seconds long. But I stop and I do that throughout the day, even to this day. 2 or 3 times a day, I will just stop and breathe.
That's a really, really good point. And considering that we were talking about this earlier also, that the air is very depleted of oxygen. We actually need to deep breathe more often to get the oxygen we need in our bodies. So I think you ought to do courses online.
They do plan to.
That's great. That's wonderful.
Yes,
Well, I hope you'll come back and share more. I know you've got more stories.
I do.
So I'd love it if you come back and share some more of those stories. Is there any story you'd like to leave the audience with?
Not to lose hope and to have faith in love, in the wisdom of your body. One story I do want to share is the day after I was diagnosed with a brain tumor and told there was no hope for me. I was in a teaching hospital and a neurosurgeon walked in with his medical students behind. And I thought, up until that point, nothing had been talked to me about my brain tumor. They were just doing tests, which just made me even more frightened. I'd been in the hospital for 2 days and nobody spoke about the brain tumor, which was horrible. So when this doctor walked in, I thought, great, maybe I'll learn something. But he took my chart from the bottom of my bed and his face went white. And he raised his hand above his head and he goes, I'll meet you all in the next room. So don't be afraid to shout out, which is what I did when he had his hand on the doorknob. I said, hey, my doctor says I'm going to die. What do you think? And the poor man stood there for a moment and
Blood drained out of his head.
slowly turned around. And he said, actually, you're very fortunate because the MRI was just invented. And in a year from now, they may know something that could save your life. And I said, great. Do you really think I'll be alive a year from now? And he said, no. He said, however, there is a doctor in Boston that might be able to help you. And I did go see that doctor and he was able to help me.
Wow. Incredible.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yes. So
breathe, be brave.
Yes.
Find the love.
Yes, trust. If you want to shout out, shout out.
That's really good.
Yes.
Yeah, being brave is difficult too, especially for women, isn't it?
Yes. And I even felt guilty when I shouted out at that man. My instant thing was to feel guilty, but I automatically reminded myself, Sandy, you were just told you're going to die. You have a right to ask questions.
Indeed. Very, very good. Well, Sandy, I've just loved having you, and I'm so happy that you came to share. I'm glad you've got a book that people can access. The name of your book is?
I Chose Love, How to Thrive After a Life-Threatening Illness Using Love to Guide You.
Very, very good. It just sounds like the best topic in the world, and certainly one we'd like to focus on more often. And I appreciate your coming and bringing your message of hope to so many people. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And I really enjoyed